The first horror game I ever made was turning Crossy Road into a psychological horror, and this game sucked. It wasn't scary, fun, or psychological horror at all. But since making that, I've gotten better. So today, I'm gonna remake it with new items, new enemies, and actually release it for people to play. So first, I wanna make the roads. And the last game was snow themed, so I decided to copy that since I know I can do it better now.
Later.
Well, I guess not. This looks horrible. I fixed this by making 4 types of roads, and if you put them in the right order, the transition is way cleaner. So now we can just spawn roads and the transition looks way better. Now the game detects when you're on the snow, and then spawns a random number of roads in the correct order, so it looks pretty natural. And since it is supposed to be scary, I made it night and gave the player a flashlight. Typical horror game stuff, but trust me, I'll do a lot more with this later. Things were going surprisingly well, until the road just stopped spawning. And you'll never guess what was causing this, because it took me so long to figure out. If you look at the road from underneath, it becomes invisible. So the road was spawning, but just this one was getting rotated upside down. I spent forever trying to figure that out when really I just had to... But with that, road work ahead, so we can move on to the cars. I tried to make a van, and after like an hour of genuine effort, we had this. So maybe 3D art isn't for me. I grabbed a free model, but made the textures myself so that it fit the game a little bit better. But when I put it in the game, it looked so bad. The fog is like illuminating the distant cars, and the headlights look pretty weird. So I switched out the van and added a custom fog effect. And that looked better, except the headlights were still weird. So it might seem strange, but instead of having them point away from the car, I made them point back at the car. And the effect this gave was so much better. I actually liked this so much that I ended up getting rid of the flashlight because I thought the idea of only being able to use the headlights to see was kinda cool. To add some variation, I made a car model, and surprisingly, it was good enough. And with a couple different color variations, the cars were way less repetitive. And while this was pretty cool, I couldn't help but notice how empty the game is. So to fix this, I made mountains on the side so you weren't just on a floating road in the sky, and I actually tried to make the detail look pretty good on these, only to realize that you can't even see it.
Come on, man.
And it looks pretty cool, but let's be honest, this does not make the game any more fun. So I want to add items that you can collect. Help, I'm drowning underwater. Just kidding, it's a green screen. You should have seen the look on your face. So the items give you a temporary boost that helps you continue running. And this is a completely original idea that I made up myself. I have 3 ideas, but the first one is a syringe. Can you tell I made the art myself? Be honest. So I modeled and textured it, but in the game, it was near impossible to find. I didn't want to just make it big, but I had to make it stand out somehow. So I made it float and gave it these particles. Anyway, when you pick it up, you get this effect and you get faster for like 20 seconds. So we can move on to the second item, drugs. I want this to be the opposite of the syringe, so instead of speeding up, it's gonna slow down time. I gave it the same particles but a different color, so they both stand out but you can still tell them apart. Getting it to work was surprisingly not that bad, and it looked good. And finally, the last item, night vision goggles. I made a simple model and getting them to work was pretty easy. They just make everything easier to see. I liked how the items turned out, but there was one problem that completely broke everything. And that was, they didn't disappear when you collected them. So you could just keep getting it over and over and over, and this made some weird stuff happen. I tried to make the item just disappear when you touch it, then the effect wouldn't know when to wear off and you'd keep it forever. So my genius game design decision was to just teleport it under the map. Is this the most accurate? Nope. But hey man, if it works, it works. The game was better with these, but let's be honest, it's still super basic and not really that fun. Okay, it sucks. I decided to try to redesign the movement so it was momentum based and more satisfying than just running in a straight line. It came with some bugs like being able to move so fast you fly, but easily my favorite bug of all time, player would sometimes just trip and fall over. But eventually I got it working so that you start out at a normal speed, but the longer that you continue sprinting, the faster you get. But you have no reason to run. You're out there risking your biscuits. For what? So next, I want to add the enemy. In the first game, I can comfortably say it was the worst enemy I've ever made.
Come on, man.
It was just some random dude I downloaded and he follows you. And I also said that it was psychological horror, but a real person chasing you that's just not what that is. Looking back on myself, getting the genre so wrong has me feeling like Joseph Cooper. So this time, I want to add an enemy that's a hallucination, so it fits the idea of psychological horror. My inspiration for this is the Hat Man. A lot of people say they see this Hat Man guy when they're having like sleep paralysis or pop like 40 Benadryls. Can't say I've been there, but I liked the idea. So I made a basic story for the game where basically you're on drugs and you're hallucinating everything. And this will get explained in the game later. I ended up not giving him a hat to make him my own, so I guess he's just the man. But in the game, I could change the way that he was rendered, and it gave some really weird effects, but I liked it. So I made him randomly switch between these so that it was more confusing and more like a hallucination. I also made it so that sometimes he just randomly appears in front of you, but just for like half a second to make you think you're seeing things. But this genuinely messed me up because I would like turn around and then get run over. But even with this dude in the game, it still doesn't make a lot of sense, and the player probably won't know that they're getting chased. So to fix this, I want to make like an intro sequence slash cutscene type of thing. In the first game, I made this cutscene, and we're using the term cutscene really loosely here. So I want to make something like that, but this time I want to make it take place in a hospital because that's where you took the drugs. So I ended up modeling this entire hospital. It looked so bad, I can't do this. So instead, I just focused on the room that you wake up in. It's pretty small and basic, but it gets the job done. Anyway, in the game, you wake up in this bed and there's a ton of super strong visual effects to emphasize the whole hallucination thing. As you can see, the man is hanging out down by your toes. And so when the game starts, you get out of bed and the glitch effect gets really strong for a second and he disappears. Then you walk out the door and you're just outside. I like the beginning part, but it doesn't make sense to walk from your room to outside. And also, why is the entire hospital one room? So I made this hallway and main entrance area and this block. So now when you exit your room, you go down the hallway and out the main entrance. And if you turn around, it looks like there's a full building. I also made it so that as you're walking, you see a bunch of things that aren't really there. As you get closer, your screen glitches out until they eventually disappear, which turned out pretty cool. But to make it more glitchy, I designed a sound effect that plays every time he shows up. And when I say designed a sound effect, I mean I took white noise and turned up the volume. So when you finally get out the front entrance, the game turns you around and shows that the man is following you. Uh-oh. And it plays another sound effect that I designed. White noise with the volume up and a fade. So he's following you, and I feel like now it makes sense to the player that they're being chased and they need to run forward. Also, I forgot to say this, but I added these trees. They spawn randomly. So we can finally move on to the jump scare. I added the basics, and since he has a bunch of different forms, I made it guarantee that he does this one when he jump scares you. A, so that he doesn't jump scare you while he's transitioning between them, but mostly because, dude, look at this. As for the super loud scream sound effect, in my last video, I made this abomination. I still believe it sucks, but a lot of people liked it. I even got emails about it. So back by popular demand, I added this sound effect to the game. This, plus some visual effects and camera shake when he catches you, meant the jump scare turned out pretty good. Overall, this enemy is one of my favorites. But the game is still not done. I've been talking about the story of this game a lot, but if you played the game without watching this video, you'd be pretty confused. So I want to leave notes that you can find that kind of explain what's going on. I made this paper and only one spawns per game, and it's pretty far out in the map, so you have to actually try to get it. When you do, you unlock one of 3 patient logs that you can read and learn about the story of the game. Except I need to design a menu for you to read these, but I've never made a menu before, at least not a good one. I made this main menu where the cars like drive by below you, but honestly I kept the UI pretty simple because my intention was for this to be a 7-day challenge, and we're on day 10 right now. Oops. And right here is where you'd put the title of the game, if I had one. This video is way overdue, so I just named it Crossy Road if it was a little bit scary. If you think you have suggestions for a better name, just keep it to yourself, buddy, because mine's perfect. Anyway, after a couple minor tweaks like a smoother transition between the main menu and the game, Scary Crossy Road was finished. So let's test it out. Okay, finally the game is done so we can test it out. Alright, we wake up in a bed. I have a visitor. He's down by my toesies. Hey buddy, walk out the door. That effect is actually pretty good. Props to the developer. Walk outside and wow, what a lovely road. I really just want to run on this infinitely. I hope I can. Oh no, we're getting chased? I did not see that coming. I'm actually a lot faster than I should. Oh. Well, that didn't last long. Overall, I would say it's probably the best game I've ever played. It's been like 4 months since I made the original, so maybe the difference isn't insane, but I think it still turned out pretty good. I probably won't do much more with this game because I'm focused on another game, which I know a lot of people are waiting for, and trust me, I'm working on it, it's just taking a little. If you haven't seen it, check it out right here. Also, I made a Discord server, so the links for that and the game are in the description. Last thing, this video is sponsored by me. Can someone please subscribe?